Hey folks, I'm Craig Taylor, and as always a huge thanks for joining me here on my YouTube channel, the Bushcraft Padawan. First aid, self-aid, basic medical training, whatever you want to call it, I see it being mentioned quite regularly in some of the Facebook groups and online communities that I'm a part of around bushcraft. And that's a good thing, right? Talking about first aid, talking about how you could help yourself and help other people, that's a good thing. Admittedly, it doesn't get talked about as much as sharp knives and axes, which is quite ironic when you think about it, but it does get talked about, and I think that's a good thing. The reason I kind of pay not a keen interest, but just a passing interest in the subject and when it gets mentioned is because between the ages of 16 and 32, I was a soldier in the British Army, and one of the requirements was that a minimum of 1 day per year was spent doing first aid training. We call it battlefield first aid training, but it was first aid training. It was, if you like, a first aid at work course, but for soldiers. So clearly some of the things that we were taught to treat or to deal with may not be commonplace in most workplaces, but it was a relatively basic course, and we did that minimum of 1 day a year. I was fortunate that in the early part of my career, I was in my late teens, I went away and I did a 2-week patrol medics course, which went into more depth. There was some suturing, there were chest drains, there was splinting, there were different types of injections, putting airways in. So it took it to another level, but still quite basic in the overall medical world. Very, still very basic. Later on in my career, I went on another medics course which refined those skills and took them to another level. I guess what I'm saying is that over the course of one of my careers when I was in the army, I was exposed to and did more first aid and medical training than I suppose your average employee. What is an average employee nowadays? I don't know. So I had a lot of training in the subject. And then I left the army, and as far as I can recall, in the 12 years since I've been out the army, I've never done anything on the subject again. I may have seen the odd video, I may have looked at something in passing, but I've never done anything formally. And in the recent months, an opportunity has arisen for me potentially in the future that will be to my advantage if I have a first aid, a recognised first aid certificate under my belt. So I've recently enrolled upon and have been on a 1-day emergency first aid at work course, and this is where the crux of the story is here. If I'm being incredibly honest, I was going on the course to get the certificate because I thought, and there was a degree of arrogance in this, I will admit, I thought that I've done all of this before. I've done this to a decent level. I've been exposed to this type of thing. I have, on the odd occasion, not often, had to put it into practice for real. You know, I'm no Florence Nightingale, but on the odd occasion, I've had to put some of those things into practice for real when I was in the army. So I went on it with a degree of do the course, get the certificate, and move on. And this is the moral of the story here. I discovered a lot during that 1 day. I'm not going to go into details because I'm not a first aid trainer. This isn't a first aid training video, but let me just read out a few things, just a few things that have changed since I last got stuck into this subject. And I don't want to go into any detail about them. Clotting agents for bleeding, that was rarely a thing that was mentioned, if I recall, when I was doing my medical training. No 2-finger sweep anymore to clear any debris out of the mouth. That wasn't taught. Tourniquets were in 1 week, they were out the next. Depending on who you spoke to, they would say that you should use tourniquets, you shouldn't use tourniquets. It appears now that tourniquets are an accepted part, depending on the conditions, of course. I would caveat that, but if the situation is correct and there's a requirement for it, then tourniquets can be applied, and they are taught. There's no release protocols for tourniquets. That there used to be some release protocols. They don't seem to exist anymore. Elevation for a wound. Normally you would clot it, you would apply direct pressure, you would elevate the wound. Elevating is no longer considered to be any benefit anymore, so unless it's for other purposes or to assist in the treatment and the bandaging, there's no requirement to get a casualty to elevate a wound anymore. I'm sure there were other things as the day went on as well. things that have changed, things that didn't used to be the case and they are nowadays, or things that used to be the case but they're not anymore. Where am I getting to with this story? What's the moral of this story? What am I getting to? We've all probably got things that we're interested in. We've all probably got things that we were qualified in, that we were practiced in, that we were conversant with, and that might not just be first aid training. That could be other assets, other aspects of this bushcraft umbrella term. And I think if I take myself as a cross section perhaps of the bushcraft community, I think that if we've done it a lot in the past, if we've been conversant with it, if we've been practiced in it, we may, I'm not saying that you do, but we may rest on our laurels a bit. We may make assumptions. We may not strive to keep up to date and to keep those skills and that knowledge up to date. If we look through the particular lens of first aid, I can't think off the top of my head of a subject that is more valuable and more important to keep up to date than in that particular area. There may be others, I just can't think of them off the top of my head. If you think there is, then drop them in the comments below. What am I saying here? If you've done some first aid training in the past, well done. Why not just go back and revisit them? I didn't realise that every 5 years here in the UK, first aid protocols are revisited and revised based upon clinical evidence that is gathered following accidents and incidents and treatments and things like that. So every 5 years you may see a change. That may be more frequent or less frequent in other countries around the world. I don't know. Again, if you know, drop it in the comments below. Things potentially change here in the UK every 5 years. If you've been qualified, if you've been conversant, if you've been experienced and practiced in the past, why not go back and take another look? Why not crack open the official protocols and booklets that your nationalities or your country's first aid or medical body provide? Have a look at those. Have a look at their official website. Have a look at their official YouTube channel. Look for up-to-date information, because clearly there's a lot of out-of-date information out there. Look for the up-to-date information out there. Get yourself back up to speed again. Maybe you go and do another course like I did that may cost a little bit of money. Maybe you can just acquire that information informally. I've got to the end of this video. It feels a bit preachy, and I don't want that to be the case, but as I was travelling back from that course, I thought to myself, I am so pleased that I went, because it's grounded me. It's made me realise that some of my skills weren't where I thought they were. It makes me realise that some of my theoretical underpinning knowledge is out of date, and to have that realisation put upon you, that can only be a good thing, right? I've stopped preaching, I promise. What do you think? Are you a first aider? Have you been a first aider? Do you keep up to date? Is it something that you've never really gone and got any formal training on, but actually maybe there is some value in doing that? What are your thoughts on the video, wherever you are geographically or wherever you are? If you've got something to say, if something I've said has resonated with you, if you agree or disagree, drop it down in the comments below. If you think that there's someone that would value from this video, please do share it. Give it a thumbs up if it's made you think, if it's made you smile. And as always, if you're not yet a subscriber, please do click on the little round icon in this corner of the screen and you will become a subscriber. Thank you for joining me this. I hope it didn't come across as too preachy. I just thought that it was an important message generally and an important message specifically when it comes to that quite important subject of first aid. Thanks for watching. Cheers.